Hi, thanks for watching BibleMountain.com. In this video, we're going to read from Exodus 19 and talk about obedience being the key to pleasing God. Many Christians have a misconception that the key to pleasing God is going to church, having an emotional experience with God, singing praise songs, engaging in evangelism, trying to convert people to Christianity. And those things are important, but that's not what God wants the most. What God really values the most is obedience. There are many passages throughout the Bible that teach us and illustrate the value that God places on obedience. Exodus 19 is one of those passages. So let's get started with Exodus 19, verse 1. In the third month after the sons of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that very day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. When they set out from Rephidim, they came to the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness, and there Israel camped in front of the mountain. Now notice it says the Israelites were in the third month. I don't know for sure if this means it was the beginning of the third month or the end of the third month. What it does tell us is that the Israelites had been traveling for at least 8 weeks. Now notice it says they came into the wilderness of Sinai. We don't know exactly where the wilderness of Sinai is, but based on things that we do know, we can get a pretty rough idea. Now, as I said, we know that the Israelites had been traveling for at least 8 weeks. And let's just assume and guess that the Israelites traveled at least 3 days per week. And let's assume that they traveled 15 miles per day. Now, 15 miles per day is not a stretch. Humans can walk about 3 miles per hour. So 5 hours of walking would get you 15 miles. Also, there are some families with young children who have worn pedometers at places like Disney and measured how far they walk in a day. And it's nothing for families with young children to walk 10 or 15 miles at a place like Disney. And so it's not a stretch to think that the Israelites would have covered 15 miles per day. And so 8 times 3 times 15 is 360 miles. And this black bar shows you how far 360 miles was from Egypt. And that gives us an idea of where Mount Sinai could have been. And we see that it's a pretty broad area. And that tells us that Mount Sinai could have been anywhere within this black circle here. Something else to think about, many people think that Mount Sinai was within this small circle here at the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula. We know that Mount Sinai was the same mountain where Moses saw the burning bush. And we know that Moses was watching the flock of his father-in-law when he saw the burning bush. And we know that his father-in-law was the priest of Midian. And we're pretty certain that Midian was on the east side of the Red Sea. And so that is an argument in favor of the idea that Mount Sinai was actually on the east side of the Red Sea, which would place it in modern-day Saudi Arabia. Having said all that, ultimately, we really don't know for sure where Mount Sinai was, but we do have a general idea. All right, let's continue reading at verse 3. Moses went up to God, and Yahweh called to Moses from the mountain, saying, "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the sons of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among all the peoples, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel." Now notice the word obey. God came to the Israelites and said, if you obey, then certain things will happen. And so God placed a value and a priority on obedience. Notice also God told the Israelites to keep his covenant. The covenant that God was referring to is the covenant that he had made with Abraham. And we read about that in the book of Genesis. And this covenant with Abraham was passed down to Abraham's son Isaac. And then the covenant was passed down to Isaac's son Jacob. And it was Jacob's 12 sons who became the 12 tribes of Israel. Part of this covenant was a lot of promises that God made to Abraham about inheriting the land and being a blessing to all the nations. But also part of the covenant was a command from God to the Israelites that they had to circumcise their sons as a sign of the covenant. And so again, when God emphasizes here to the Israelites that they have to keep his covenant, what he's telling them is they have to circumcise their sons. And again, that's a matter of obedience. He was reminding the Israelites that they had to obey him in the matter of circumcision. Notice also this, God made a claim here that all the earth is his. And possession implies authority. In other words, we humans, when we own something, we have possession of something, we have authority over that, and we have the right to do with it what we want. Likewise, all the earth belongs to God, and so he has authority over it. And that means God has authority over all people. And so this tells us that God had the authority and has the authority to tell people what to do, and in this case, to tell the Israelites what to do, and he was emphasizing to them the importance of obedience. Now let's resume reading at verse 7. So Moses came and called the elders of the Israelites and set before them all these words which Yahweh had commanded him. All the Israelites answered together and said, "All that Yahweh has spoken we will do." Now if you know anything about Old Testament history, you realize how ironic this statement is. The Israelites claimed that they were going to do everything that Yahweh told them to do, but if you know Old Testament history, you know that they did not do that. The Israelites disobeyed God over and over and over again. So again, it's interesting and somewhat ironic that the Israelites would make this claim at this point, because they certainly did not do that. Let's resume reading down in the lower left there at the word "and." And Moses brought back the words of the Israelites to Yahweh. Yahweh said to Moses, "Behold, I will come to you in a thick cloud, so that the Israelites may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe in you forever." Then Moses told the words of the Israelites to Yahweh. Now notice this phrase, "believe in you." We read here that God was going to come down in a cloud, and he was going to speak to Moses in an audible voice so that the Israelites would hear this audible voice speaking to Moses. And the reason God was going to do that was so that the Israelites would have some tangible proof that God himself was speaking to Moses, and because of that they would believe in Moses forever, meaning they would believe that Moses had actually received the words from God himself. Now again, we live in a society where many Christians believe that the key to pleasing God is to go to church, have an emotional experience with God, sing praise songs, engage in evangelism. And those things are important, but that's not what God values the most. The Bible teaches us over and over that what God wants first and foremost is obedience. And Exodus 19 is one of those passages that illustrates that. Exodus 19 illustrates to us the value that God places on obedience, because when God brought the Israelites out of Egypt and brought them to Mount Sinai, he emphasized to them the fact that they needed to obey him. And again, that illustrates to us the value that God places on obedience. If you haven't already joined my email list, please do so. First of all, it is free. By joining my email list, you will get a free video every week delivered right to your email inbox, and you will receive it as soon as it is available. This is the best way to make sure you don't miss out on any of my free content. In order to sign up, go to BibleMountain.com, click on follow, and there will be a place to enter your email address. And once again, thank you for watching BibleMountain.com.